and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. City Manager, do we have any items to be added or deleted?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I would like to delete item number 20 from the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Moving on to public participation. This is the time where you're welcome to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. I have 2 meeting cards here in front of me, and I'll call up the first speaker. You have 3 minutes. If you just approach, give your name, and you can go and get started. Cheryl Lucas. Not sure the microphone's on. We'll have to see if we can get it.
Okay, my name is Cheryl Lucas, and I live here in the city of Loma, and I'm a senior, and I would like to propose rent control in Loma. I've had an increase in rent, 10% this year, and they plan on, my landlord plans on raising the rent again 10% in 2024. And I did get my Social Security raise, however, but that's just going to be eaten up by the rate increases, or rent increases. And anyway, that's what I'd like to bring to the council tonight and ask if you would consider this, or if you've had any input from other tenants, rent payers in the city asking for this. But that's what I want to say, and that's what I would ask for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to probably butcher this. I think I got the first name correct, Dr. Gabriella, but I'm not sure how to say the last name. So please come on forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dr. Gabriella Odudu, just like it looks like. I'm a resident physician at Loma University. I've come to speak to you on behalf of my colleagues today. Earlier this year, we filed a petition with the National Labor Relations Board to unionize. Since that time, we've received a lot of pushback from Loma University, a lot of hostility as well. We filed this union for several reasons. One is our goal to provide patient safety and safety for ourselves, quite frankly. We're often working up to 28-hour shifts, and after which we work 12 to 14-hour shifts. In my program alone, we work 12 of these shifts in a row without a day off. Studies show that a human deprived of sleep for 24 hours straight has the blood alcohol level equivalent to 0.1%, which is above the legal limit. I have heard stories of colleagues falling asleep, passing out in the OR during surgery from exhaustion, several colleagues getting into accidents on their way home from falling asleep at the wheel. Further still, we have a brand new hospital, as you can see, but we don't have call rooms for our overnight staff, meaning we end up sleeping on the floor. It is a huge safety hazard, not only to ourselves, but to our patients. We hope to get your attention on this very, very serious issue. We are worked to exhaustion often. We are also struggling financially as we are paid the bare minimum. Several of my colleagues end up taking second jobs with Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, just to make ends meet. We filed for this union for fair compensation and better working conditions. May is actually National Mental Health Awareness Month, and last week we held a film screening for free at the Look Theater, the Do No Harm documentary on physician suicide. We had an amazing turnout, and we hope to follow up that event with a rally at the end of this month. We cordially invite you to attend and to learn more about our efforts in the packet that we will pass out to you. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. And just so everybody's aware, just generally, we're not allowed to comment on items that are not on the agenda because it's actually a state law violation. So we thank you for bringing the information to our attention, and if there's anything we can do with it, we move forward. But we just have to be careful so that we don't violate state law, the Brown Act. So, okay, thank you for those of you that participated. That's going to be weird with this feedback.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Is that it? Oh, that's good. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the agenda, we're going to go into items under H, scheduled and related, starting with item number 1, which is a fee study update for the city of Loma Linda.
So our consultant Eric will present this item. So,
Great, thanks, Jarb.
you want a pointer?
Just waiting for the PowerPoint.
Here you
A
go.
very important PowerPoint. All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Eric Johnson from Revenue and Cost Specialists, and happy to be with you tonight to present the results of this cost of services fee study. Before we do, just a little background on RCS. We've been around for over 40 years. I myself have been doing this for 33 years. I've been working with City of Loma Linda since the 1990s, I'm happy to say, although time keeps going on. So we're really the premier expert in user fee, cost allocation, impact fee studies. We're a small company, but we thrive on referrals and doing the best job we can, of course. And so we're all former city employees. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 30 years. So what have we done? So we've really recast the city's budget with a business orientation. We did this because voters told us to. In 1978, they passed Proposition 13, which limited property taxes. Then a year later, they passed Proposition 4, which said that fees that do not exceed the costs reasonably borne of providing the service are not considered taxes. They wanted government to act more like a business and know its cost. But while governmental accounting does a great job of tracking revenues and expenses at the fund, department, and division level, it was never really designed to track revenues and costs at a service level. So we had to create that information. So working with staff, we identified what it costs to provide the full business cost of services to your customers. So there's no city council service, nor city manager service. These costs, amongst others, are part of the overhead support costs. It's just like when you go to the store and you buy a can of corn. You know when you buy that can of corn that it includes the farmer, it includes the truckers, it includes the distributors, it includes the checker that's in front of you. You know that. Well, we've done that same thing with the city services. All those costs are, support costs are part of the cost of providing that service. Because you won't stay in business very long if you're a business if you don't know this information. And you also won't stay in business very long if you're not able to match revenues up to those costs. So we've done this also. For every fee service, we identify the revenue and match that up with the cost of providing that service. And this was a thorough process. We wanted to update all the current fees. We wanted to add, remove, redefine fees that needed that to be done. We want to make sure, of course, that they're legally defensible. We want to make sure that the revenue that we're projected to be collected is something that is viable. And there's some services in here that have more of a market orientation, and we've looked at that also. So how do we come up with this? We need to identify what's the cost, which is based on the time spent of staff. So we sat down with all the various different departments in the city, and we really want to thank all the various staff for their help provided on this project, and identified all the time that they're spending on these various services. We allocated out 100% of everybody. Everyone's doing something, and so they're either spending time on providing support to the rest of the organization or providing services to your customers, to the public. We identified how many of these you're doing, so we have some volume information, so that helps us to identify, making sure we're allocating out 100% of everyone's time and not 150% of everyone's time. We also need to calculate a fully burdened hourly rate for every position. So it includes salaries, includes benefits, includes a share of general operating expenses, but it also includes citywide overhead. As I mentioned earlier, costs of city council, city manager, HR, finance, facility maintenance, fleet maintenance, all those costs are part of the support cost. And in some cases, we had department overhead and divisional overhead. So we have a fully burdened, a business billing rate for every position. And then, now we know what the costs are, because we take that fully burdened hourly rate, we match that up with that time detail, and that tells us the full business cost of that service. We then sat down with staff again and said, here's the cost, here's your current fee, and here's what the fee should be to recover 100% of those costs. And we want to make sure that was making sense, all that information still looked good, and so the results of that are what you see in front of you today with this report. And we want to distinguish between tax-supported services and fee-supported services. Community-supported services and what we call personal choice services. Community-supported services, tax services, are those things that typically benefits the community as a whole and is 100% supported by tax dollars because that's the only way that these services can be provided. You're not going to charge a fee for fire response or for street maintenance or park maintenance. These things are what your taxes are there for. Whereas the fee services, the personal choice services, instead of benefiting the community as a whole, benefits an individual or a group within the city. Oh. Back. And so examples of those are development services, planning services, building services, engineering services. You can choose to subsidize those services, but again, it benefits a smaller subset than the whole community. So another way to look at this, I'm kind of more of a picture person. Taxes and grants, really in California local government, there's really two broad sources of revenue, taxes and grants and fees. Taxes and grants are there to support community-supported services. That's their purpose. Fees are there to support personal choice services. But to the extent that the fees the cost of that service isn't covered by the fees, tax dollars are making up that difference. That's the only other place it can come from. The services are being provided. The question is, who's going to pay for it? And so we identified about $7.3 million in subsidies of personal choice services that are being paid for with taxes. That's a huge number. We're not expecting that $7.3 million is something that you can recover through fees. We think that of that number, about $584,000, almost $600,000 in additional new revenue from these fee changes to cover the cost of the service is what you would recover. So some of the reasons for the difference is there on the community development line, you have a $424,000 subsidy, but we're only suggesting about $84,000 in new revenue. And that's because we have to cost out a lot of services that you do infrequently, that you may do one of every couple years, but we still have to cost it out. So those things add up, and that's what's making up the difference there. And on the public safety side, there's a huge subsidy there, as you would expect, because most of that is your medical aid service. That even though you have a subscription fee and a response fee, it doesn't come anywhere close to recovering its cost and never will. And so that's the big reason for the subsidy on the public safety side. And in the other areas, we're pretty close. So in the report itself, it has all the detail behind this, of course. It starts out with the summary in the beginning of the report, Schedule 1, list all the services, list the current revenues, list the cost, identifies the subsidy, and any possible new revenue. Behind each of those rows is in Appendix A, where you can see what's the current fee and what's the proposed fee. And then the detail behind that, for every service, these two matching pages where you can see, if we had really, really good vision, what the current fee is, what the proposed fee is, but also on the right-hand side, what's the cost detail? You can see all that time detail that we spent gathering with staff. How much time is spent? Who's spending time? How many of these are you doing? So for every service, we have that level of detail to back up, to have that legally defensible number behind the fees that you're charging. So our goal is to identify the full cost for these various different services. We made fee recommendations for each of those services that we feel is appropriate to charge a fee for, and you have been charging fees for. But the City Council is the decider. You decide which services should be charged the full cost and which services should be subsidized with tax dollars. Because again, the services are being provided, the costs are occurring, it's just a question of who's going to pay for it. If the fee doesn't cover the cost, The taxpayer is making up that difference. And is that what you want to spend your tax dollars on? Because there may be some services that you do that are important enough you want to subsidize, and you have in the past. And so we've looked at those subsidies in the past and kind of kept those subsidy levels in here for the recommendations going forward. But that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're asking of you now. That concludes my presentation, if there's any questions.
So what happened is we usually do this fee study every 5 years. But because of COVID, this last study is about 8 years ago.
Yeah,
2015.
2016.
So that's why staff recommendation is for you to adopt the fee study and adopt the council bill an urgency resolution so that we can use this updated fee as part of July 1st budget year. So, any questions? So,
Dr. Daly?
Appreciate your presentation, and I understand that one of the primary foci of your study is related to ensuring that we cover the costs of providing services. Is there any assessment of how the Loma Linda city fees compare with communities that are adjacent to us?
We don't do that type of comparison because it's difficult to compare apples to apples. Even in the development area, even though, for instance, everyone has a conditional use permit, everyone defines it differently. So being able to say that this CUP here is equivalent to this one is very, very difficult to do. Years ago, we had all this data, and I wanted to compile this to be able to have these kind of typical numbers and typical costs and typical times, and it was just all over the board because everyone kind of slices that sausage differently. The other piece of that is that you don't know if other cities have updated their fees recently. You don't know if the council has decided to subsidize those fees. Because at the end of the day, especially with these development fees, they're not moving the needle as to whether or not somebody decides to build here or not. They are, relatively small in comparison to the cost of a project, unlike maybe capital impact fees. And so people are building here because they want to be here or they own property here. Not because this fee is $1,000 more or $500 more than the neighboring city.
I understand what you're saying. The point of my question is, 13 years ago when I first ran for city council, there were several small and larger developments, particularly smaller ones, that said the fees at Loma Linda and the bureaucracy we have to go through is unreasonable compared to what we have to deal with if we go to one of the surrounding communities. So that became a concern of mine. I'm a little, I appreciate what you're saying. I am a bit disheartened that we have no clue how we compare with communities that surround ours.
Well, one of the things as we're going through this process is that we're kind of pulling pieces of, for instance, in the planning area, pulling pieces of it apart and why, it takes this much time to do this. Well, this step, I've been doing this a long time. I have a good idea of how long this step, the range of how much time this step should take looking from
Sure.
city to city to city.
Well, not all cities are on the same schedule for
Yeah.
this assessment. Yeah,
Right.
I understand.
Yeah, and if you get kind of out of that range, I'll push back, why is this either too low or too high? And sometimes it's because we have this and our code says this and we have to do that. Sometimes we think about it a little bit more and make some changes to it. And so it's we want to make sure we're looking at what it costs to provide these services
No, I
here.
understand. I
And-
understand.
And also, you mentioned kind of what developers care most about is how fast they can get their application processed. Time is more money than the fees. I've worked in so many cities where the developers will pay double and triple to get their application processed quicker.
Mr. Johnson, I know you mentioned it also. It's important to consider that staff time and costs are a big part of this. So it's hard to compare that to another city because their staffing costs can be drastically different. So it really isn't a true comparison. We have to look at what the actual costs are for us here And then I've had and seen recent documentation of several developers that are extremely happy with the service and process here in the city. And now, as I think about it, the only thing I can attribute to is the fact that we're on the council 13 years ago. See, that's what changed it.
Telling me I'm old is,
No, you fixed it.
If I may, Councilman, staff did look at about 20 other cities and download their planning fee schedules to compare it. We tried our best, but just like Mr. Johnson was saying, we all process things differently. A lot of them process ministerially, and we have a public hearing, or we notify the neighbors, so we have to incorporate those fees too. And a lot of our research was because we were looking into what the new fees would cost, such as ADUs or SB9 lot splits. We didn't have those in our previous fee study, so we were trying to see what Redlands, Ontario, Fontana, an array of different cities how they were processing and what their fees are. So we as staff tried our best to compare ourselves to them, but that's only with a few select fees.
And I have to note, unless I read this completely wrong when I was doing my homework, that we actually lowered fees in a couple of areas.
Absolutely. If it takes less time for whatever reason, more efficient, or the process has changed, or maybe it's a lower paid individual doing it than before, we can't charge more than the cost. So if the fee needs to come down, because it's more than the cost, it needs to come down.
Again, I could be totally wrong, but I was looking at the pool permit thing, and I should have waited.
I confess, I'm probably trying to oversimplify a complex metric.
It's, well,
But I'm trying to look at it also through the eyes of a developer.
sure.
That's, I guess, the only point that I'm trying to make. But
Your customers.
I appreciate, Lorena, your comments. That's helpful.
Mr. Jindal.
All right, I'm going to nitpick a little bit. Do you have the fee schedule in front of you? First one I'm looking at is S-068B, page 11.
Notary?
Yep. I believe during the budget workshop, we had talked about how this was costing the city and we were going to change the fee for notary services. Am I reading this right, where we're not making any changes? -068.
So I'm showing that there's no fee for this currently, and that we're recommending a fee of $15, and that's one that we have to subsidize. The cost is actually closer to $65, but there's a statewide limit on what notaries can charge. And for, gosh, until maybe 5-6 years ago, it was $10 for the longest time. And so we cannot charge more. There's a handful of fees in there that are limited by state law, and this is one of them.
Okay, I might be reading this wrong. Column 3 is total revenue coming in right now?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we have nothing coming in for notary. We're paying 65. What is column 5 telling me?
Column 5 is a subsidy, so it's basically the revenues minus the cost. And so we're saying that there's no fee for this currently. It's costing $65, so you're currently subsidizing this to the tune of $65. And also, what's not on that schedule, but's in the report, is that you only do one of these a year. These are rare that you're doing it for the public.
So shouldn't column 8 be $65 for possible new revenue?
No, because you can't charge more than 15.
Okay, so it's not the total aggregate over the year, it's for each.
It doesn't say anything there. It says
Right, and
zero.
that one has 0 because we don't, even though I put in one unit, you may do one every couple of years. This is something new where you're offering it to the public. And so I try and be conservative in estimating revenue. So if it's something that you do rarely or may do one every couple of years, I put in 0 revenue, even though there may be a fee there.
I could have sworn I paid $30 for it. That's a whole other story. You're saying there's a $15 limit?
$15 per signature.
Learning all kinds of stuff tonight.
Yeah, per signature. So if you're with two people on the same document, that's 2 signatures and double the fee.
Or 2 different documents. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Maybe that was my
I
issue.
believe so, yeah.
Going to something bigger, so S-071 facility rental. Am I reading this correct, where we're getting $45,000? It's costing us $14,299. So we're making a profit of $30,701.
which is okay for this service. Under Proposition 4, you can't charge more than the cost reasonably borne of providing the service unless you're renting a city asset.
Okay.
Like a rent a facility, or think if you're a golf course or a marina or a community center. So you're allowed to make money on this, you're allowed to charge what the market will bear.
And facility rental includes what?
Community center.
Okay.
Community,
Not the senior center?
no. The senior center is not correct.
It has never been for rent?
It did for the beginning, but what happened, people destroyed it and back damage, so we stopped it.
Got it. Sounds like we don't have fees for damages.
Dr. Rigsby.
Yeah, these numbers are scary if you don't realize that it's multiple charges. Because it looks like it's $210,000 to do a building plan check.
Right, yeah,
You know,
so the numbers on,
Yeah,
exactly, those are aggregate over the course of the year,
Fiscal year.
fiscal year, correct.
yeah, is there something on here that indicates how many ticks that was?
There is, it's in the detail of the report, and so for each service, there's that, they'll follow that S number to Appendix B, you can see exactly how many units we're talking about, and if you look at Appendix A, you can see what the individual fees are.
Yeah, because it looks really scary.
Yeah,
without
I
that.
understand, yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna nitpick one more. S-035 on page 9. Parking enforcement, we're bringing in 30,000. It's costing us almost $250,000. So we're losing money. How are we rectifying that?
Stop writing tickets. That's how you rectify it, because it just, you know, the people who are writing those cost way more than the revenue.
Yeah, that's
And when
the cost
people
of
say,
service.
oh, you're writing tickets to make money, they have no clue how much we lose on those. So the only way to stop that is to stop writing tickets, in my opinion.
But we're not changing the fee for parking
Yeah,
ticket?
and these are fines, and so they're a little different also. You can charge a fine that's, you know, because you're trying to discourage bad behavior, but they're also kind of market-based. Unless you're the city of LA, you're not going to charge $200 for a parking ticket. Most cities are in that $40, $50, $60 range, and we looked at where your bail schedule is at, and you're kind of in that range that is where most cities are at. And this is one area that we did look at what other cities are charging to make sure you guys are not falling behind.
So we're making no change?
Not recommending any change for that. This is one of those that you're not going to recover your cost. As the council member said, it's kind of the nature of the beast.
If you charge someone like $15,000 for a parking ticket, you would never collect it.
So we've lost a total of 7.3 million approximate, and through this new fee study, we are expecting to recoup about $500,000 of that?
That's correct, almost 600,000. And the biggest reason for that gap is medical aid. If we look at S0, where is it?
42? 42A.
42A, thank you. That we have the program cost about $5.7 million. You're bringing in about $100,000 in revenue. And so therefore, there's that big $5.6 million gap that, again, is kind of the nature of the beast. You're getting something, which a lot of cities don't. And this is not something that, you have market forces in play here also. You can only charge so much for your subscriptions that people will sign up for. You can only charge so much for your responses that insurance companies will pay. And so that's factoring into this also.
Out of curiosity, every time we do a fee study, how much does it cost us?
29, something like that, yeah.
25,000.
I got Jarb on my back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How much do you lose on us?
I do okay. Yeah, this is, I don't say this all the time, but this is has been one of the best cities to work with for all this time, and a big reason for that is Jarb and the kind of the culture he brings, and so it's a pleasure to work here.
We need to replay that when Ron comes back in. Okay, Well, if there's no other questions, it doesn't look like it's a public hearing, so we just look for a motion. Is it a public hearing? Okay, so we'll open the public hearing, invite anyone down to speak if they would like. Okay. We'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to move
I
this.
move to adopt Council Bill -R 2023-10 and Council Bill R-2023-11.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, we have a first and a second. Would you please call the roll?
I'm sorry. Motion is to adopt Council Bill R-2023-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, California, adopting the fee study update dated April 2023 and the associated new fees for city services within Loma Linda, and to adopt Council Bill R-2023-11, an urgency resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, California, adopting the fee study update dated April 2023 and the associated new fees for city services within Loma Linda. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard?
Yes.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, moving on to item number 2.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, Lorena, will present these items.
Mayor Duper, council members, members of the public. My name is Lorena Matarita. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Loma Linda. Tonight, I am presenting one public hearing item. And the applicant is High Point Communities. The original request, which is listed on the notice of hearing that went out to all the surrounding neighbors, and it's posted at all the public places, basically requests what you see at the on the screen. So it is to annex 141 acres from the San Bernardino County Sphere of Influence area into the city. It also includes a general plan amendment to change 4 commercially designated lots from commercial to low-density residential, as well as a zone change, because if you remember, we have a one-map system, so when we change the general plan map, we change the zoning map, and that's to change the same 4 lots from general commercial zone to low-density residential, and those are what we call the pre-zones, because it's not technically within our city. The other application is a tentative tract map for two maps. One is a 10.96 acre site to create 37 future residential lots, and the other one is a 55.72 acre site to create 89 new residential lots. And finally, the application also includes a variance request seeking relief from the fence and wall code section. Basically, they are asking to move the wall all the way to the property line instead of having a 15-foot setback, and they're also asking for an increase in height from 5 feet to 6 feet, but I'll get to that more in details. So just to give you an idea of the existing setting. So in terms of the annexation, the unincorporated 141-acre site is located south of Barton Street, east of the Union Pacific Railroad, west of Nevada Street, and immediately north and south of Beaumont Avenue. Altogether, there are 51 parcels in this annexation site, and approximately 65 acres of the annexation area is already developed, which includes residential, religious assembly, a wellness facility, as well as approximately, I think it's 34 acres of flood control facilities, and including the channel. Surrounding uses are residential, commercial, institutional, and to the east, as you're probably well aware, is the city of Redlands, so it does border the city of Redlands. The general plan for this area is commercial, It includes commercial, residential, as well as the zoning, the area we call hillside residential, very low density. Same with the zones, and per Measure V, for those that don't know, for this area indicated as map 20404 on the screen, we call that the San Mateo Creek area. The county designates this area as Rural Living 5. Basically, they designated each, if you were to create new parcels on this site, minimum 5-acre lots would be required per the county. So just really quick to give you some annexation background, I did bring this application to your attention about a little less than a year ago. Basically, I requested that you give us permission to initiate the annexation request with LAFCO. You did approve that, and since then, we've been working with them. Actually, we've been working with them since 2020 on this specific application, so we're going on to almost 3 years. But that's besides the point. So again, all 51 parcels, they are required.
I'll interrupt you real quick. I'm on the LAFCO board now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so on that note, we would-
Which is interesting because I didn't realize the process was so long. Now, I've only been there a little over a year, so.
and the process doesn't have to be too long. Like we're talking about what I just mentioned is they started with a pre-application, and then we go a lot of back and forth, and then until we finally get here. So we have been communicating about this site in the design idea phase since 2020, but it wasn't only until like a year and a half did we actually hit the ball running. So if this gets approved tonight, so you're aware, we will let LAFCO know, and then LAFCO will start their hearing process, and if they approve it, then they will formally create the new maps, and we will annex it into our city. So why are we annexing all 51 parcels? Well, to avoid the creation of islands that are not allowed by LAFCO. And we need to do that for the future proposed tentative tract maps, and that would allow the development of approximately, 66.6 acres of land for 2 residential tracts. There are 2 places of worship within the annexation area that own 30.5% of the land value within that area, and we do have already contracts in place with them. And because of this reason, there isn't going to be there's no protest allowed on this annexation. So even if somebody comes forward and they just own one property, that would not be a reason to deny the future annexation with LAFCO. So proposed public services, except for the SDA church, existing development within the annexation area is currently serviced by private wells. And then I will add to that, and I think it's somewhere else in my presentation, with the exception also of the Islamic church. Existing development within the annexation area would continue to receive water via private wells, but they, once annexed, if they'd like to, they could hook up to the city services and line as well. So that would give them, through this annexation, they would have the opportunity to do so. I can tell you have a question.
Yeah. I read through the staff report, and it was very interesting, very good. You've got SDA Church and the Muslim mosque that own 30%. Do they have any, I understand what it says in terms of they can't protest. Do they have any input on how that property that they have partial ownership is developed?
Yes, 2 things. Before, when they develop those property, even though it's in the county, it's already in the sphere of City of Loma Linda, they have to get an agreement called pre-annexation approval. So that pre-annexation means that, yes, you can develop within the county, but when the land is annexed into the city, they have to accept that annexation.
So basically,
And
they
has that
signed off on it
Oh,
already.
yes.
So
Yes.
that's already
Yes, sir.
behind us.
So there's actually 3 properties that already basically signed off on this annexation with these, and the wellness facility.
What's the wellness facility?
It's adjacent to I'm not a part of, I wasn't a part of the original approval, but it is adjacent to San Mateo and east of the church, the SDA church. It says something about insight.
I was thinking the bar, but that's wellness to some people.
if you drive south on Santin and go zigzag,
Yeah.
it's on the right hand side.
Yeah, almost directly east of the church,
Oh, I haven't really noticed it. Interesting. Okay, sorry.
hidden within the orchards, and, yeah, a lot of trees. A little grove right there.
So is there revenue sharing between those 30% property owners and property owners of the balance of the project?
I don't,
We will get, when we annex to the city, yes, the city will get the property taxes. What do you mean by revenue sharing?
There's
If
no
they own
development
30% of the property, those two religious organizations, then I assume they get some benefit from this development as well.
No.
nothing will change in terms of their taxes or property taxes. Nothing will change.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
They're just, the value of their land just
Right.
is 30%.
got it. Thank you.
And I guess really quick what I was gonna say, so proposed and future development would receive water and sewer services from the city upon annexation. And currently, that specific annexation site does receive fire protection services from the city of Loma Linda. And they do have police protection currently provided by the county of San Bernardino. And since Loma Linda already has a contract with the police, police services would also remain unchanged. Okay, so as for the tract map, again, like I stated earlier, it is a almost 11 acre site, the first tract subdivision. This is what I like to call the 7,200 square foot minimum lots. We're having 7,200 square foot with the largest lot being approximately 15,000 square feet in size. There are 37 and one lettered lot, which is the stormwater basin adjacent to New Jersey Street. The main access will come from San Mateo Canyon Road on the east, and on the west of this tract map, the second access would be through New Jersey Street. And we are vacating Bermuda Street and creating a cul-de-sac. I believe it's what was recommended for the traffic study and also for security purposes, as there's already a proposed intersection right here on Santin, and having a second one would be too close.
Will that be a controlled intersection?
Yes. The one further south will be,
That's,
one of them will be traffic signal, and we work with city waivers.
To cost share that?
No, they run it.
yeah, I'm part of the background too, if you guys aren't aware. We did meet here at City Hall with City of Redland staff, their Public Works team as well. So the next slide will give you just an aerial view of how this 7,200 square foot minimum lot tract will fit in this side of the community. The second subdivision, the second map, is approximately almost 56 acres in size. It will include 89 future residential lots. The lots will range anywhere from 20,000 to approximately 33,000 square feet in size. And per the requirements of Measure V, because if you recall, I said earlier, this is the San Mateo Creek area, the applicant was required to design it that it would have a density of 2 dwelling units per acre, and that is what it comes out to be. Access, there are 2 primary points of access. The first one right here at the top eastern side of the track is through New Jersey Street. The second one is going to come through Nevada Street. And there will be 3 new cul-de-sacs as well. And I do want to point out that they are correcting the turn right here on San Mateo and Nevada. Currently, there's that curve, and they're going to make it into a 90-degree angle as requested from staff, and I believe also indicated in the traffic study. And this is just an image of what the future residential tract will look like in that specific community and area. As you see, they are pretty much taking up the entire 141 acres.
Well, that'll take another set of controls down there, right, Jarb? For that 90-degree turn, you'll have to have, that'll be controlled also.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so I work closely with the City of Redlands, and as part of the development, they will put in the traffic signal. And High Point also doing the project on the east side of the street in the City of Redlands. Yes.
Okay, so one of the other requests, as I stated earlier, is the zone change. On the screen, you'll see on the left side is the existing, the pre-zone for today. It's highlighted in that white circle is commercial, like I said. What the applicant is proposing is future low-density residential zoning, and basically staff supported it because it is adjacent to low-density residential. It makes sense for this community, and as you're well aware, we need housing here in Loma Linda, and that is what the state is pushing. So we are fully in support of it, and we're hoping that you guys would support it too. And that is 4 parcels being changed. Along with the zone change is the general plan amendment, same 4 parcels, same type of change, so commercial land use into a residential land use. All track maps require the submittal of preliminary landscaping plans, so that's why there are 2 different sets of preliminary landscape plans in your staff report tonight. The one on the screen is for the larger map. Basically, this plan is showing the location of shrubs, trees, and ground cover at the perimeter, the basins, and the pedestrian zone or the parkway areas. It also details the walls and fencing. As you can see right there on the left-hand side of the screen, they are proposing a decorative split-face block wall, similar to what they did in the Groves specific plan area, as with a 2-inch cap at the top. And then also, in the next few slides, but I'm not done with this one, I will show you how the decorative pilasters are split, and I believe they're going to be split every 20 feet apart. Along in this design too, we're going to see vinyl fencing for the interior lots, and that, per Planning Commission's recommendation, is going to be 6 feet in height. And I guess one thing I forgot to mention too, and I know it's been mentioned in previous council meetings, so when it comes to the tree spacing, in the interior portions of the residential development, we're looking at approximately 25 feet in tree space for tree spacing, and on the major arterials around 30 feet, and that's about 12 to 15 steps if you want to know how far 30 feet is. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to also provide you with just examples of the types of trees that we're going to see in this new development. Along Santa Mateo, Nevada, we're going to see trees such as sweet shade tree and Afghan pine. Those specific trees are the 2 trees on the screen on the top left, and the center one, that's sweet shade and Afghan. Along New Jersey, which is going to be that other main access road for both developments, we're going to see fern pine, that's at the top right. And the interior streets, we're going to see a lot of colorful, I like to call them colorful decorative types of streets, like Bradford pear and crepe myrtle. Those are the bottom 2, left and center. And then the stormwater basins, there's going to be an array of different type of trees too, but adjacent to the street, as you drive by, we'll be able to see some beautiful Chinese flame trees, which is the bottom right-hand corner. One of the applications is the variance request, and so I'm just going to quickly explain what's being requested tonight. So the code requires there be a 15-foot side yard setback before a fence or wall could be erected, and those are only for corner lots. The applicant is requesting the wall or fencing be built all the way to the property line. Staff is in support of this request because we have seen issues in the past when developers or developments have a 5 or 10 or 15-foot side setback. Owners tend not to maintain that side of the yard. So that's why we seem to be in support of it, and hopefully you are too. And the other part of the variance request is within these reverse corner lots, they also are restricted to 5 feet just that is how the code is written. The applicant, as well as Planning Commission, is requesting the 5 feet be increased to 6 feet in height, which is typical of what most walls we see in other sections of the development, and that's going to be obviously for privacy and for safety reasons. Okay. So what you see on the screen now is the street section rendering. This is to give you an idea of what we're going to see as we walk or drive down San Mateo Canyon Road. So there is a 16-foot pedestrian zone, or parkway is what I like to call it, and within that section it includes, right now as currently proposed, 2 feet of landscaping, which will eventually see those crawling vines going up that beautiful split-face block wall, a 6-foot DG trail, a 3 feet landscape strip for the trees to be planted in, and then a 5-foot typical sidewalk. In the internal street, it's going to be approximately 12 feet wide with sidewalk landscaping and those decorative flower trees. Here's a rendering of the wall and the pedestrian zone going down San Mateo Canyon Road. So this in the future is what we expect it to look like, more or less. Again, that is that 6-foot split face block wall with the crawling vines, and then the pilasters, kind of like what I was trying to explain to you earlier. Now you can actually visually see it every 20 feet apart to kind of break it up. And the walls, they are proposing walls with anti-graffiti coating on the public side. Okay, so our favorite part of the project is the environmental review. With all major projects, it is a requirement. So an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project by Lilburn Corporation. They also assisted the city with project processing and communication with LAFCO. The study evaluated the potential impacts of the project and identified appropriate mitigation measures. All of the potential impacts that were identified in the initial study can be mitigated to a below level of significance, including sensitive habitat, noise, air quality, and traffic for both level of service and vehicle miles traveled. We are required to send out, staff is required to send out that notice of intent to adopt this MND, which we did back in October 2022. We did receive a couple comments, and those comments are included in your staff report. And we did, through those comments, we did provide the clarifications in the final initial study and even staff report. I know you guys are always interested in traffic because of Measure V, so I did add a couple extra slides for this presentation. So for those that don't know, Measure V does state that all new residential tracks require a traffic study. Basically, Measure V states to maintain level of service C or better for peak hour intersection operations. In any location where the level of service LOS is D or worse at the time an application is submitted, then roadway improvement measures shall be imposed on that project to assure at minimum that the level of traffic service is maintained at the level of service no worse than those existing at the time of the application is filed. So Gardini Consulting Firm prepared the Canyon Ranch traffic impact analysis for us. And for those that don't know, the purpose of the study is to evaluate the potential for traffic impacts resulting from the development of the proposed project in the context of the City of Loma Linda's discretionary authority for conformance with locally established operational standards. End quote. Okay, next slide. So the traffic study, originally they were just going to look at 5 study intersections, and through our design committee review board and the help of Public Works, they asked for 11 more study sessions to be included in the traffic study. Out of those 11, 7 of them did not meet the threshold, but like I said, they were still considered a part of the traffic study. And through this traffic study, the consultant found that the proposed subdivision project is forecast to generate approximately 1,188 daily trips including 88 trips during the AM peak hour and 119 during the PM peak hour. So the traffic study concluded that there is no significant traffic impacts at each and every study intersections for year 2040 with and without the project conditions, except for one study intersection that is projected to operate at unacceptable levels of service without improvements. And that's going to be at that odd intersection at Nevada and San Tin Canyon Road. So that intersection is currently at a level D in the morning and a level E in the evening. And the morning time is going to be from 7 to 9 and then 4 to 6 for those that aren't aware when the peak hours are. Installation of a traffic signal is recommended at the Nevada Street and San Tin Canyon Road intersection. And the other mitigations and recommendations the traffic study had was to construct a southbound left lane turn lane and construct a westbound right turn lane. And that is now identified as part of the project and on your maps. Keep in mind, the westbound right turn lane will be in the city of Redlands, but it is identified on the maps. With these changes and these mitigations and conditions and recommendations, we can expect for that intersection to operate within an acceptable level of service C or better during those peak hours. But I do want to note that the applicant is not solely responsible for the installation of the traffic signal, since it's not warranted until 2040 without the project. However, the project proponent will be required to contribute towards the funding mechanisms for arterial streets, traffic signals, and interchange improvements through the development impact fees, as well as a traffic fair share of approximately $38,000. And again, that is standard for all development projects, all major development projects. All projects require public noticing, so we put the notice of hearing at 3 public locations. We also put it in the newspaper on the city website. We did receive a couple comments that we did address, and copies of our responses are in your staff report. All projects also require findings, and the findings were made. The findings were made for the general plan amendment, the zone change, the track map, and also the variance. And also conditions of approval were included with the recommendations tonight. So we did take this to Planning Commission in March. On March 1st, Planning Commission unanimously approved it. However, they did have 5 recommended changes or added conditions. I have them before you tonight on the slides. And just to summarize, the first one basically says to dedicate Lot 33 to be an open park. Basically, Lot 33 is I'm not sure what the size is now, but that's 7,200 square foot minimum size. So they're recommending it to be like a pocket park. Same thing for number 2, Lot 53, convert that into park open space. Recommendation number 3 was to work with the Historical Commission and city staff to design a historical art element such as a mural or a plaque to put at the perimeter wall in San Mateo Canyon Road. Recommendation number 4 was to increase that 2-foot landscape area where I showed you earlier where the future crawling vines are going to be, 2 feet to 5 feet. And then the 5th recommendation Planning Commission had was to increase that 5-foot height to 6 feet in height. So with any change that happens to a plan, we take it back to our design review committee. Basically, it's all the department heads and public works staff, fire, to review the changes being proposed. So just to let you know what staff's response is, we did not agree with all of Planning Commission's recommendations for various reasons, and we'll get into that details. I'll let the public works director add to it, but just really quick, just to summarize, basically those 2 pocket parks, they're not functional. They would be high in maintenance. Okay.
What they're looking for is 7,200 square foot lot that can be a pocket park with a gazebo. And what will happen is all you have is a homeless that will stay underneath the gazebo. So I said, no, I prefer we don't have the pocket park within that development. And the Holder Crooks Park is just down the street, and the new 30-acre park by Lennar is just up the street also. So that's the reason why I said no to the two pocket park. Item 3, I disagree with that too, because right now we already have Park and Beautification Committee that look at the artwork or art in public places, so that I recommend that the developer is still gonna pay developing impact fee for art in public places, but instead of go to historical committee, let's take it back to the Park and the Beautification Committee. That's the reason why the number 3. And number 4 is that to widen the little space between the DG trail and the wall from 2 feet to 5 feet, it just have more weed to deal with. So what I recommend is, instead of the 2 feet, make that 1 foot to plant the vine. I can't pronounce that. Vine.
The vine.
And then instead of 3 feet of parkway to plant trees, make that 4 feet, so that this way we don't have to lift it sidewalk, so that make it 4 feet instead of 3. We should have a cross-section for that, right?
I do have a cross-section, and I can go back to you.
It also gives them more space for rain to fall and perk into the soil for the trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that
Does-
was staff's thought as well.
Does DG perk
Yes,
rain
yes.
much?
But
Okay.
not as much as just grass. So that's the reason why we said no to 4 of the 5 planning commission recommendations.
So we absolutely agree with their 5th recommendation, and then we'd like you to consider the 6th recommendation. Staff would like you to consider that 6th recommendation, basically decreasing, like Jarb just said, that 2-foot strip to 1 strip, and adding that 1 feet to the 3-foot landscape strip where the trees are going to be planted. In total, that is a 16-foot pedestrian zone or parkway. This is what it looks like right here. So we would want that 2-foot strip to be decreased to 1 feet, and then this landscape strip from 3 feet to 4 feet. Better visibility from the street as well, that,
Quite
more
honestly,
aesthetically pleasing as you drive by.
what you notice too is a lot of the homeless camps and homeless residents like to be closer to those walls, so that also prevents a little bit of that.
So on that note, to conclude and to wrap this up, the 141-acre annexation is required to prevent the creation of an island, provide needed services including water and sewer for the proposed future development, and will not be protested as total land values owned by the churches within the area are required to annex per development agreements. The general plan amendment and zone change would change 4 commercial parcels to low-density residential and would continue to be compatible with existing and future uses in the area. Comments and concerns received for both the initial study and the notice of hearing were addressed. Revisions to the initial study provided required clarification, and recirculation is not required. And conditions are in place to ensure appropriate compliance with mitigations and city standards. So staff tonight is asking that you, 1, adopt the mitigated neg deck, which is the environmental study, adopt the mitigation monitoring reporting program, adopt the resolution to approve the general plan amendment, adopt the ordinance to approve a zone change, approve the annexation application, approve the tentative tract maps for those 2 subdivisions, and approve the variance request, and lastly, also approve this latest change that staff would like to add to this application. So the recommended approvals listed above are based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to conditions of approval and the mitigation measures. The applicant, as well as the engineer, is online, and myself and Jarb are here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions of the council?
You went first last time, so I'll go first this time. A few questions. So I was reading through some of the concerns citizens had, and I read your reply to the emails and what they had said in person as well at the Planning Commission. First one, the kangaroo rat. Someone said it was vulnerable. I Googled it. It is vulnerable, but you're saying it's not present
Correct.
in this area in enough of a quantity?
Correct. There's no kangaroo rat in this area.
Okay.
It's an already disturbed site, and as part of the initial study process, this M&D that we're adopting tonight is to get the consultants and the sub-consultants, such as a biologist, to visit the site, and there is no habitat for any concerned species, any sensitive species.
Okay. I'm going to come back to number 2. I'm going to go to my third question, which is the Southern California Edison. I was reading somewhere that it's low impact because electricity needs aren't going to be that much. But all the houses are going to have solar panels, right? So it doesn't matter anyways?
Correct. It's a new law,
required.
a new law that the yes, California law, not the city. They're required to have a solar panel, correct.
Got it. Why are we still considering, like, why is that still part of the checklist?
We use the standards checklist per the CEQA guidelines, so that's what the consultant goes off of.
Okay. Going back to the number 2. So there were a few people that had issues with there being no public facilities, mainly a park or some green area. Looking at this, can we do anything with Basin Lot A?
We cannot use a stormwater basin for open space or park area.
Is it accessible to the community?
I believe the slope doesn't allow it, it's unsafe.
The one at the Grove, we have a detention basin that also acts as a dog park. But the problem is, every time it rains, it's filled up and it's major cleaning, they have to clean up the dog park, so. And the track to the south, the one that you look at, is gonna be 20,000 square feet lot. That's big. So the homeowner will have backyard and already instead of go to the park.
I believe too, because of the slope into the stormwater basin, the engineer did request the applicant to put I believe a 5-foot wrought iron fencing around it for safety purposes.
So I hear what you said where there's 2 parks nearby, the new one, and then we have Hoda Crooks. A lot of people, when they go out for walks, they're not going to faraway places. They like to stay within their local vicinity. If there's no park in this area, is there any place for congregation that if I'm walking my dog, I can go to?
Well, the parkway is pretty wide, 16 feet. So in addition to sidewalk, you have DG. If you want, I could put benches in the 4 feet area between, the trees. The trees is 20 feet apart.
The problem is you gotta maintain the benches.
Correct. You can have homeless. And
Well, it's not just that, the benches wear with weather. I mean, at my HOA, that's a constant.
But again, it's something that if the resident in that neighborhood, hey, let's put up some benches. We have done that around the Whittier Street by Bailey Park. We put some benches around there, so.
How far away is the closest park from here?
From that, you just go down Beaumont to Hoda Crooks Park. And if you go north on Nevada, you would go to, by the time you get to Mission in California, there's a park right there.
So that'd be over a mile away? That's
Less. For the one on Mission in California, it's less than 1 mile.
If, I want to support Councilman Jindal's issue, because one of the aspects of our planning in the community that I'm most proud of is the parks that we have and how we sustain them and continue to develop them with walking tracks and so forth. And this is a major development. I agree with the staff report that little pocket parks are not particularly functional for what we usually use a park for. Why could we not ask the developer to, instead of having 2 little mini parks, to merge them into a larger lot where we have a functional park like we have in the Lennar development currently?
Yes, if it's something that High Point and the staff talk about is combine the two lot, into one location and put a little bigger than the pocket park. The staff can work with High Point on that if that
I
recommendation.
think it's a good
from-
idea, and it would address the issue you're raising about having park area for gatherings and so forth, because that park, I've driven by it several times in the Area D park that we have. And there's always somebody there. There's always somebody there. And so I think it's a good community development project, and I support Councilman Jindal's
Okay.
issue with that.
So hold on, I'm looking at Steve. So Steve, we talk about it and you, the landscape, come up front. Yes. So are you okay with, like, you and I put in our back pocket to?
Good evening, Steve Bliss, High Point Communities. My address, 16501 Scientific Way, Irvine, California. We're the project applicants, as Lorena said. And can you go back to maybe that's the landscape plan for the larger lots? Yeah, there you go. So is there a pointer?
Yes.
And where is there a button somewhere?
Little,
Oh, there it is.
go. Other way.
Oh, okay, I'll figure it out. So, yeah, these lots, as Lorena said, are approximately 20,000 square feet minimum. So we identified, rather than one park here, I believe is what was the Planning Commission's recommendation on one lot, and then to which is not on the screen right now, the 7,200 square foot lots, there's a smaller park there, bifurcated, the park's bifurcated into two. We discussed internally at the company that maybe a better thing to do would be, if we want to create some park space here, would be to combine these two lots at this kind of intersection and create one park, which is almost an acre at that point in time, with, parking, the ability for people to park right here. So if it's the desire of the council and staff to do that, we'd be willing to acquiesce those two lots to create some open space for, as Councilman Jindal said, for people to gather, or if they're walking their dog, they could sit, maybe a little shade structure. Nothing active like basketball courts or anything like that, but something that's more passive in nature, creating that extra open space. And it probably would allow this area, when you come in, to breathe a little bit, to have it open right through there. So that's something we could support.
Just for context purposes, the park that you developed
In
at
Citrus Trails?
Lennar,
Yeah.
up in Area D, what is the size of that compared to what you're proposing
Oh,
here?
those parks are much larger. In fact, go ahead.
Yeah, so that specific park, what you're talking about, is approximately 14 acres in size, and once phase one, and with both phases, it's going to be 30 acres in size. Keep in mind, the 7,200 square foot development, the map that we were seeing, is a little over 10 acres. So even that entire development, it's smaller than the park. So what we're going to propose, comparatively speaking, is going to be very small compared to the 14-acre park.
But we can still put the playground equipment in and have some picnic tables and so forth. There would be not on this one.
Too small for, yeah. And the 30 acres up north, we're the ones that took the hit on the value of the property, because, we were essentially the landowner. So when we designed it, we decided to put in 30 acres of park, and it didn't gore any developer.
But that's
because
two,
That
yeah.
was our
Sorry.
decision. Yeah.
Just to clarify, that's actually two parks that will
Yeah.
go in Area D. One was on
Right.
the Citrus Trail, which will be the first phase. Those are constructed and built that we did. The second phase of the parks that will be directly adjacent to those in Area D is the Groves, which is the property we bought from the city. And those plans have already been approved conceptually. Those maps are approved. We were before you several months ago for those approvals. That's a huge area. Quite frankly, it's more park space than we've seen for projects that size, which is great. It's going to be a great focal point for the city. But those are actively engaged parks, soccer fields and,
Yeah.
basketball courts and all that.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about soccer fields, but I want it to be a functional park. What do I mean by functional? Because I spend some time at the parks here, because this is an important project to me, it's the playground equipment and the picnic tables that get all the use.
Sure.
The walking track gets some use, the soccer gets some use, but the picnic tables and the playground equipment. So that's what I'm talking about, is I don't care where we would put it. I guess my priority is to be sure that it's something that community members would find useful, functional. It would be a draw.
Sure.
to them,
We
not just a
certainly-
bunch of grass.
Yeah, we could certainly explore with staff some active use, like a tot lot with some playground, you know, like climbing equipment and that kind of thing.
Let me put
along-
in my 2 cents.
Please.
So being a homeowner and one of the probably failed city experiments, and where we're actually an HOA, but the prior council dealt away our development impact fees and created public parks within our community. Those are some of the most hated things in that community because they bring in outsiders. Now, I don't care what that sounds like, I'm giving you reality, and that frustrates the homeowners to no end. So when we look at these developments, I try to think, if I was a homeowner and I was living there, what would I want? And it's very easy for us to project what we think that they would want from sitting up here. But that's why I try to let the developer and the market dictate what normally sells. And this, again, this could be controversial or whatever, but public parks come with increased costs for us as a city. And we have to think about where we're going to come up with revenue to maintain things. So these are not HOA projects, correct?
That's correct.
So that means that all falls on the city to maintain it, and we're already struggling to maintain what we have. I see a value in having a large central park and a couple of other larger parks like we currently have, and being able to focus our resources there, which we already are, and easier to manage. And convenience, it's hard for us to think about what convenience is for these people who live here, because we don't live there, we're not gonna live there probably. So I just want to be really careful when we try to plan out what we think those people are gonna need, because again, previous council made some significant mistakes in my neighborhood, and those are some of the biggest things that people, if people had an opportunity now to vote those people off of council because of those parks, they would. Dusty, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, what they did is they jammed the houses into very small lots, just big enough for the house. And then they compensated for that by putting these central block parks that, like you said, the people don't even like.
Well,
So,
they're public parks, and there was a kind of a rub there too, because the HOA maintains them and spends the money on them, hence I know what park benches cost. But the problem is they're public parks, so randomly, anybody from anywhere can roll in and use them right next door, like you said, literally within feet of people's homes, and it makes people uncomfortable. So we need to be very cautious when we're talking about a development, especially a higher end with large lots like this. I tend to like to hear what the developer thinks the market would actually value, so.
Sure. There's a little context to this design too, and Councilman Rigsby, I don't know if you recall, but a couple of years ago, we met with, you helped facilitate a meeting with these residents that live here on the hillside, that are elevated here, that look down onto this, because we were considering a smaller lot program with more park space, more open space, to see if that would be a potential trade-off for support for smaller lots with more open space. And the resounding, and it was not that many folks, but there was a number, you know, it was fairly well represented, that said, we want large lots and no parks. We don't want people coming into this area and using, I don't know if you recall that discussion that we had, but they were firmly of like, don't give us any parks, we don't care about that. Now, granted, they don't live there, but it's sort of what you were saying, is that they just didn't want people from out of the area coming in, and you just can't stop people from doing that.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah,
you
and
create. Well, I don't remember the.
There was a survey, I'm interested in
It It wasn't a survey, it was an informal meeting that we had, perhaps Mayor, or Councilman
It
Risman
was,
shed
it was a
some light.
meeting with some of the people who were the force behind the Measure
Measure
V
V.
and its other, the other political forces behind that. So it was, yeah, but it was,
20 years ago.
yeah, but
No.
it was basically to take the temperature of any appetite for retrenching on some of the standards within Measure V as well, and that was part of the reason for the meeting. Because, you know, if you've got someone who has the political power to get Measure V passed, and you want to amend it, you kind of want to take their temperature to find out what their desire is to put up with that. And that's what the
Totally agree.
meeting was
That's a
about.
long- That's a
Yeah.
different generation of population from where we are now.
True, but it's just, he's just throwing it into the pot.
Yeah, I mean, it's more anecdotal than anything else about this open space, but we can support either one. We, with no park, we get 2 lots back, so I guess, that's not a bad thing. But on the other hand, we want to create, we're all about creating communities that work well within the fabric of the cities that we develop in. And if it's the will of the council, to a greater extent, the population, that there needs to be, 40,000 square feet of park here, we're willing to work with the staff to develop a plan that could make that happen. But I think there's good arguments on either side, and we'll do whatever the will of the council and staff is on something like this.
He looks like he has something to say. Okay, yeah, to summarize kind of my position, I know at least in the north side where there's not a park, like within the immediate vicinity, that's one of the call out for people is like, hey, we want at least some kind of small green space. And that's where the garden really comes in handy because it serves that purpose. Reading the comments, sounds like a lot of homeowners, even though they're not in that exact area because it hasn't been built, would be in favor of it. So I'm not saying like we need a full-fledged park, but at least some kind of green space, so if we can work towards that. Here are some of the concerns, but I think we can overcome those and make the benefits outweigh the costs.
All right, well, I guess we can open the public comment too.
Thank you.
All right, public comment is now open. Anyone who wishes to speak on this project, please come forward. Ovi? No. We'll close the public comment, and we'll entertain some direction.
Okay, I've got a couple of comments, and this won't surprise Lorena or Jarb. I have serious reservations about the recommendations and solutions that the traffic study produced. And I've talked with each of you about that. As somebody that has to get to early morning meetings from time to time, I can tell you that the Mountain View exit entrance is a mess. It takes 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what time of day you go through there. And I have concerns. I support the project. I like the project. There are a lot of things to like about it, so I support it. I have strong reservations, and I want to voice these now, about the impact on what is already a serious traffic issue at Mountain View, at California, and at Alabama. I don't know where else they're going to go. I mean, they could go to Anderson, I guess, and I don't go down Anderson early in the morning, but part of the reason is it's to avoid traffic. So I have concerns about that, and I don't have any solution. That's not for the city to resolve. But in terms of the project, and this is no reflection on the quality of the project, I have some significant concerns about an increase in traffic congestion. And we don't have any mass transit to address that in this area. So I'm still flummoxed by that. that's one issue. The other issue that, again, won't surprise you is that, as I drive around our city, and including the Lennar project that we just finished in Area D in the last year, there are some beautifully landscaped areas, and there are a few, and I want to emphasize few, lots that have weeds that are knee-high. And I don't know how to control that outside of an HOA, and I know HOAs are not a magic solution, and they have their own set of issues, but I think as a city, we're at a point where we need to begin to take a look at that to address it. And I'm not sure what the implications are for a new project like this, because these are going to be with the sizable lots in at least the second part of the project. People are going to invest a lot of money, so I think that implies that they will be more motivated to take care of their property. I accept that. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. But I still think we need to look at, when we say, what's the slogan we have as a city right now? Save, we're saving, or something like that. But some people have taken that for license to just let their lawns go. And so I'm seeing increasing numbers of property as I drive through the city that are full of weeds. And I don't have a solution to recommend, but I think it's something we need to study. And I think probably now is the time to study it before we launch a major project like this. Because the project we just finished, I would say 90% of it looks really good and is well maintained, but there's no HOA fees, and there are properties, you can drive down several blocks and see from here to there that there's big problems. So I'm just laying that out as a future issue that I believe the city and the council need to address without having any solutions to recommend. But I am concerned with this project about the traffic implications, and I'm frustrated because I don't think the city has any control of that.
Yes, you and I talk about it,
Yeah.
and because the state law that keep coming up, that the RENA number, the state required that the city, you have to add so many thousand homes
Yeah.
into your city. It doesn't matter where they're gonna park, it doesn't matter what the traffic gonna look like, you have to build it, and it's just frustrating. I agree with you,
I just want to be on record that I see those two concerns. And it's not a fault of the project. I think the project looks good. I still would like to see a larger park.
And
there.
another thing is you mentioned Mountain View, California, and Alabama.
Yeah,
And majority of the traffic is the
Yep.
truck traffic
Yep.
that going
Yep.
northbound.
exactly.
And
You're right.
again, we don't have control over that neither, so.
Okay, Dr. Rigsby?
I guess I should have asked it earlier, but where did you say the controlled intersection would be for the 7,200 square foot lot property? Is it on the north side of the property? In the middle of that curve?
The proposed intersection?
Yeah, is there gonna be a signal intersection? Because it's going north, it's going east too, right?
Not
It's
there.
going both ways, yes. East, north, south, so 3 different ways.
So Steve,
Well,
help me
that's
here,
west.
because you're working on a project in the city of Redmond
west.
on the east side, so.
No, you're talking about the other one that's further south.
The further south one?
West, yes.
Or this one with the signal?
No. The city of Redlands adjacent is the larger lots below where the vacant land is on the right. There's existing homes. If you go to the Google Earth, maybe that might show it a little better. Oh, what- Yeah, you can see, where's the pointer? Yeah, there's existing homes there. The Redlands development's down there where Lorraine is pointing her. Yeah.
Up a little bit, up.
So where's the controlled intersection?
Down at San Mateo and
Where it
it's
goes right there,
Nevada.
where it goes,
Where
east.
you've got that really convoluted thing right now where it kind of turns to the right with the stop signs and all that.
It's- I don't know what to call it, other than it's like
Can we use
it's almost like a
the,
dairy property right there.
can we use the pointer and point at where the,
Go back to that, right,
There, that's a good one.
so right there, that's like a farm.
Yeah,
where that
that's
farm
not,
is.
it's down below.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah,
That's where it curves.
right.
so that will be,
That will be
controlled?
signalized,
Is
yes.
that the only one?
Yes.
Okay. Because if there was one up there and that small thing is just way too close to Barton Road. Yeah.
Right.
You'd have the same problem we have at Anderson
You have
Street.
a queuing issue
Oh,
during
yeah.
red lights and so forth. There's other ways out as well, because,
Yeah.
you know, this intersection right here at Barton and New Jersey is a controlled intersection here. So most likely, people will just do this when leaving, and then they can make right in. If they live here, they can make a right turn in, and a right turn out. Okay.
Okay, there's no further questions, we'll entertain a,
Okay, before you take can I ask, do you see want that convert to 2-lot into 1-acre park, or yes or no?
I'll wait for a motion on that and see if we have
Okay.
any takers.
I'm going to move the staff recommendation, the original recommendation. And the staff recommendation on the,
It's right up behind you.
the staff modification of the recommendations from the planning commission.
I'm going to do a friendly amendment.
You can try.
I think you need a second first, so I'll second it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my friendly amendment would be for consideration for lot 77 and 78 to be some kind of green space. Doesn't have to be a park, but some kind of green space.
I'm sensitive to Mayor Duper's comments about the local people's concerns. I don't really think that people with 20,000 square foot lots need more space. I think they've got room for a picnic table in their own backyard. That's a big lot.
I think the idea
It's the
is,
size of my property, which is, half an acre is a big lot.
the idea is more about a place where they can meet. I think one of the things I heard from the mayor was that currently the HOA is paying for those parks.
Mhm.
And that's why people might not be so inclined, because there's people from the outside coming in while they're bearing all the cost.
It's whether it's correct or not, I'm not endorsing the theory, but the theory is that crime in the community is caused by people coming in using the open public park spaces. So there is a drive by the HOA, the homeowners, they want to make it a gated community. The rub is they cannot, because the previous council did away with those development impact fees and allowed those to be public parks instead of private parks. So the rub is, even though those folks want to make it a gated community, they can't, because it's public park area. This would be public park area, meaning anybody from anywhere in this country, if they wanted to, could go use that park within the restrictions of hours and stuff, normal stuff that we would have, but not just the people in that community. And so you have to consider, again, looking at the size of the lots, what's planned to be there, what some of the, I'm just assuming, what some of the folks there are gonna want or not want. I think we have to be careful and let the market kind of play out there and what the developer sees as being the most viable. I'm just getting, like Dusty says, I'm just guessing, when you got a big lot like that, you for the most part, are probably staying on your own property. And if you want to go to a park, we do have ample park space, and they are paying development impact fees, which can go towards that park space. So they're not getting out of the deal whatsoever. They're honoring their side of it. I would guess that if we did build this, that would not reduce the impact fees. They're just going to give us those 2 lots for free? I would think there'd be some negotiations probably on those fees.
Fee credits.
Right? I mean, that's what's gonna be, and then at the end of the day, we're gonna have to maintain it. And that's where I grow more increasingly concerned, and like, you know, what was just mentioned, it's hard for us to maintain a lot of our public area as it is now. And I know keeping stuff nice, and we've talked about the costs and revenue and where we're going in the future, whether or not we're gonna be able to do that. I just want us to be careful with that.
Yeah, I'm most worried about tent magnets.
I mean, how many tents are there in Cottonwood Park? That one's even more publicly available than this one would be.
But what's more,
What's more desirable?
to me, a better question is, what is the state going to do to protect those tent communities beyond what they've already done with all of their rules about removing them, not being able to remove them? Because to me, we were planning for the future, and I don't know if we want to just give them more turf.
My only response to that would be, sounds a little bit of fear mongering, unless we're seeing that happen currently in our parks, which I haven't.
Legitimate fear mongering.
Yeah, I don't
Is
think
that
that's.
happening currently in like Loma Linda or Redland
Yes.
parks, though?
Oh, yes.
To a scale where we would be concerned that people are
I
gonna.
think we get plenty of complaints if we ask our law enforcement, and I'm seeing nods. I would say that's probably one of our number one complaints. I know it is in the city where I work. People, right or wrong on the issue, and this isn't, we're not debating the morality of this. The reality is that the public is not happy with the current situation regarding a lot of the homeless, and how we manage that is gonna be key.
I think, I ask myself, would I want one of these parks next door to my house? And my answer would be no.
Yeah. You know, we just, not to drudge up an old conversation, but I just got looped into an email chain again the other day with the folks that live next to the cemetery. And, yeah, did you see those emails? Yeah. Where they're out with the mariachi bands again at 11 o'clock at night. And so what often gets billed as it's a peaceful, quiet thing, you live next to a cemetery. Well, it's going to be easy. You're going to have a beautiful park next to your house, and that's not always the way it develops. So I just think we have to be careful with that.
So I think it summarizes to, we're hearing two different things. We might have population that wants it, we might have population that doesn't want it. How do we find out what they're actually gonna want in this area?
That's the market.
Well, I agree with Councilman Jindal. You know, there's a lot of speculation. I can tell you, I live near Holder Crooks Park, not far from Leonard Bailey Park. I hear no complaints. I hear only compliments about appreciating the track, that it's lit at night, and I've heard speculation that the vast majority of people who utilize Holder Crooks Park come from Rialto and Fontana. I don't know that. Have we done any surveys to know? And I'm weary of speculation. And, you know, I'd like to know whether this is a real issue or, as Councilman Jindal said, fear-mongering. I don't know. But I'm not willing to just make assumptions because I don't have any feedback from my constituents about issues with the current parks.
How about I do this? Well, after this meeting, you're welcome to ride along with my court enforcement officer to view all the homeless camp that we have in town, that we constantly have to move them along. And
Are they in parks or where are they?
They're in Park, there's Sun Park, Alma Digna Park, Ted Dawson Park, and Bryn Mawr Park with a gazebo. So at the gazebo at the, by the elementary school, it's always have people sleeping in it.
Okay.
So,
I mean, that's the kind of,
and we asked Sheriff, the Hope team has been.
Casey can weigh in on the types of calls we
going to
get.
the-
Is
to the
this,
site.
I'd like to hear
I'm
their
sorry, I
input.
didn't hear, what was the last part?
The Hope team, which is with the county sheriff, have been routinely go to those sites where the homeless are hanging out, so, yes.
And have we had issues in Bailey or Crooks or any of the other parks? Or is it mainly on the north side of town?
The Horner Crooks Park, we do, not the homeless, but we have people that are coming over and vandalize the restroom.
Yeah, that I
I mentioned
know,
it to
yeah.
you, and graffiti, everything. So, yes, we do.
Okay.
Lieutenant Smith? Good.
Yes, and your new park in the Citrus Trails, that one, how many times now? 3 different times? They vandalized and stole the sink and started a fire, and so it is a constant problem for us. The deputies on Graveyard Patrol do extra patrols in the parks because of the calls for service in the middle of the night, so.
How come those aren't being captured in the point and time count?
That's a whole other topic. The point in time count is literally what's going on at that moment on that particular one day out of a year. And a lot of this population is very migratory, so to get a true count, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult.
Okay. Again, to summarize this, the community may want it, may not want it. Is there anything we can do to let them decide?
They're not there.
Yeah, they don't exist yet.
That's my point. Is there anything we can put in stipulations that we leave these empty until people move in, or any way to move this to a later time?
I'm not comfortable with that. I'm ready to move this project along. I think it's a good project. It's been talked about for a long time. I think there's a segment of the population that will buy and that will live there, and that's what it's being designed for. So that's just kind of where I stand on it.
So there's a motion and a second without any amendments currently.
Okay.
Dr. Daly.
Dr. Daly. All right, without anything more, Madam Clerk, let's see how this goes.
Motion is to adopt the mitigated negative declaration for the Canyon Ranch annexation and subdivision request, and to adopt the mitigation monitoring report program. Adopt Council Bill R-2023-06, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda amending the land use map of the adopted general plan, modifying the land use designation of 4 parcels from commercial to low-density residential, at an approximate 10.96 acre site identified by assessor parcel number 0293-081-9, -11-12 and -19 lots, which is General Plan Amendment Number P21-073. Motion to introduce first reading and set the second reading to June 13th? Sorry, 2023 for Council Bill O-2023-01, a zone change number P21-074 to change the current pre-zone of 4 general commercial zone lots to low-density residential lots within the 141-acre annexation area. Approve an annexation application P21-072 to annex the entire 141-acre project area into the City of Loma Linda, including service for water and sewer, and approve tentative tract map 20403, application number TTM number P21-075, a 10.96 acre subdivision for the construction of 37 single-family residential units, and tentative tract map 20404, a 55.72 acre subdivision for the construction of 89 residential units. Approving variance number P23-038, request, I'll go by what's there, to allow the block wall at all indicated corner lots to encroach 15 feet into the street side setback and be located on the property line, and to allow the vinyl fencing to exceed the reverse corner lot height limit of 5 feet to 6 feet. And to approve the added recommendation to change the 16-foot pedestrian zone parkway area, changing the 2-foot landscape strip to 1 feet and increasing the other landscape strip from 3 feet to 4 feet. Based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval and mitigation measures. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard?
Yes.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you very much.
May I make one
Yes, sir.
further comment? What is do we know anything about the plan for east of the project we just approved? In other words, the Redlands part. Is that going to be more houses, or do we know?
It's, if you could go back to the Google Earth. Thank you, by the way, for your support of the project. We really appreciate it. Committed to
we're looking
creating a
forward
quality
to-
project here.
We're looking forward to the other one starting soon.
Yes, and we're moving forward with those plans with the city right now, so we're excited to get that started. New fire station, community center, park, Oak Woodland Park, yep.
You ready to start this summer?
Yes, that's the plan, yeah, exactly, sometime in the summer. I think, are you referring to this piece
Yes.
right here? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's a
I
big
can't
parcel.
speak for this piece, this is not a property that we own or control, but this piece. Oh, it is, I'm sorry. Thanks, Dan. Right here, it's planned for 27, I believe 27 lots? Yeah, 27 lots, 14,000 square foot minimum with the city of Redlands. That project has not been before the Planning Commission or council. We're working currently with them right now.
Thank you. The purpose of my question was, it just exacerbates
I
the
knew you were gonna
concern
use
I
that
have
word.
with traffic mitigation issues,
Understood.
and that's not being addressed. That's not your fault,
I understand.
but I'm frustrated that we have no input that I'm familiar with to impact that.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar.
Move it.
First,
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 7
Okay.
and comment on 11.
perfect, okay. You want to take those first before, or are you willing to
Sure.
do a second?
Sure.
Okay,
Well, we need a second before we can.
okay, so we do have a second.
Okay.
Jarb, can you address number 7, please?
I don't need him to address it. I'm looking to see what my questions were on it, because I went through this yesterday.
It does seem a little redundant, because we just did the urgency clause.
So just to clarify,
There-
to
that-
clarify, the urgency resolution
Yeah,
lasts only 30 days, so we're asking you to approve, to extend the urgency resolution another
That was
day.
for last month's.
No, I know we did last month's, then I thought we just approved it with the fee
No,
stuff.
that was a different emergency.
Those are,
resolution.
that's the fee study for like permits and applications. Last month was the development impact fees.
Okay, okay.
okay, that answers my question on that. On number 11, regarding the, modifying the shower at Fire Station number 1. My question isn't about the shower. It's, why do we have to go to Carlsbad, California to get somebody to fix a shower problem?
They were the original contractor that did the modification, remodel that.
But if they didn't do it right the first time, why are we going back?
They did the per plan, but the plan is to meet the ADA or handicap. We cannot put the little curb to prevent the water from coming out.
But that's not new. I mean, that was in place when
Yes,
they did the
yes,
original work.
but then they built per plan and they exceed 1 year already, so.
So it's our fault.
Correct.
We didn't call them on it.
Correct.
Within,
And so now what we have to do is we have to make the slope steeper and,
okay, that all makes sense to me. It's just I'm frustrated we don't have a more local vendor that we're doing business with, and so somebody messed up.
we went out to bid. We went out to bid and we went formal bid, so we get 3 bid and he's the lowest. and he honor his work
That's current.
correct.
Yeah.
So, and we went out to bid the first time, he's the lowest bidder, but it died down in San Diego, so.
So the only point of this, from my perspective, is I'd like to utilize local vendors as much as possible.
If you can-
Carlsbad's
If you can do it for less, I'd vote for it.
He does have free time on his hands.
yes.
You'll pass on it?
Yes, within reason. Within reason, yeah. Okay, I'm good.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, we have first and a second. Madam Clerk?
May I clarify who made the second? Who seconded the motion?
Dr. Daly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I also asked if the maker of the motion second could, as part of the motion, to exclude the minutes because that was not included. They weren't completed, so I didn't delete that item.
That's a
Second.
very friendly amendment, yes.
Thank you. The motion is to approve the consent calendar, excluding the minutes of April 11th, the item 4 for the minutes. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to new business, item number 19. Jarb's Pride and Joy.
Yes, once a year, we have to do the five-year CIP for pavement rehabilitation. And this is Measure I, which is the half-cent sale tax. Just to let you know that, yes, it is a 5 years plan, but the one that really what we focus on is for next fiscal year, so which is in green. So for next fiscal year, we plan to do pavement rehabilitation for the street east of Mountain View, south of Lawton, all the way to Bryn Mawr. So this subdivision right here will be grind and pave, which is similar to the one that we just did west of Mountain View. The other part is Peterson Track, which is the street east of Mountain View, north of Mission Road. It's called Peterson Tract. It used to be the county area that we annexed it. We sort sealed it a couple of years ago, 7, 8 years ago when we first annexed. But now it's time to do a grind and pave. So we plan to do that. Also on Van Leuven Street from Mountain View going west, just past the street that go into the subdivision to the south, we plan to grind and pave the street also. The street on the north side of Lawton, west of Bryn Mawr, this street will get survey seal. The street over here will get survey seal, and this is Evans Street, just west of campus, so we'll get a survey seal. So this is what we plan to do for the next fiscal year. For the fiscal year 24-25, we plan to do the area in pink, so that's Mountain View from Bryn Mawr to Lawton, Lawton from Mountain View to Whittier, Whittier down to Bryn Mawr and Beaumont, I'm sorry, Beaumont along here. And then the street east of Bryn Mawr to Whittier, or the street will be get grind paved. And if we have enough money, we will do Barton Road and a little bit of California Street. And what happened is we only get about $624,000 from Measure I. So what I usually do is combine it with SB1, which is also another $600,000. So between 1.2 million, we can do all the street that we plan to do. For the fiscal year 25-26, again, further east of Whittier, all the way to the railroad track, and the street in North Central neighborhood. So for fiscal year 24-25, 26-27, Redlands Boulevard, which did service seal a couple of years ago, but by then we should do a grind pave. So that's my plan. And then in red, 5 more years from now, so that's Poplar Street, Court, Ohio, probably be more than that, but that's what my plan is for the next 5 years. Thank you. Any question?
Okay, any questions? Motion?
I'll move it.
First and second?
Motion is to adopt Council Bill R-2023-09, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, State of California, adopting the Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2022-23 through fiscal year 2027-28, submitted by staff. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Yes. Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. We're not going to do item 20 because we're working on a way to restructure some of those meetings, and we may not have to do anything with that. So we'll see if there's any changes next month, if we have to address that. Moving on to reports of council members.
Yeah, no reports, one question. One comment, one question. Comment is, I've heard from several people that they really like the repaved road on Mountain View. Unsolicited, but it's very smooth compared to some of our surrounding communities. The other is a question on when there's going to be a cleanup on the on-ramp, off-ramps on Mountain View and the 10 freeway.
Okay, on the
Issues are getting
eastbound,
pretty high.
on the south side, on the eastbound, I can check with our contractors.
Okay,
Yeah, eastbound off-ramp and eastbound on-ramp.
Okay.
We maintain those.
weeds are getting pretty high.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Reports of officers.
Yes, I'd like to announce that on May 23rd, we will have grand reopening for our senior center. From 9 to 11, we'll have cake and ice cream and ukulele group to play music over there. And I have one question. Next meeting is June the 13th. Councilman Rigsby will not be here, and Councilman Jindal will not be here. I want to make sure that all three of you are going to be here. I have a budget.
That's really weird because I won't be here either.
No, he's not going to be here. So, Lenore.
The secret is we're all going somewhere together and you weren't invited. That's the 13th of June.
June 13th.
Do we want to try to move it?
Jar,
Yeah.
remember, we're having a second meeting in June.
I have to have second meeting in June. Well, yeah, we can move it to, two things. I plan to have on June 13th is approval of the budget for next fiscal year. Even though I already went over the budget with all of you in the budget committee at the workshop, and I have even better news is I'm not gonna have deficit spending. I plan to have a balanced budget. But it's still important. And I don't want to push Sonia if we can make the second meeting in May. Are you available in second meeting in May? You prefer that? Which is on May, I don't have the
Yeah,
calendar.
I won't be here for the second meeting in June either.
Oh, no. But at
So-
least four of you
so-
can be here.
If you do June 20, whatever it is, 27? Yeah.
Can you make 23rd? That was our plan. Okay? So are you available for May 23rd to do the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay? For the budget, and then, what is the second meeting in June?
27th?
June 27. The four of you gonna be here? Okay, so the next meeting will be May 23rd and then June 27.
Is the only thing on the May 23rd budget? Is that the only thing, or are you going to have a regular?
Well, it's gonna be a regular meeting, so, but.
May I'll be here, but June 27 I will not be.
You're not here neither.
So there's two of us missing on June 27th.
And that one is gonna be the trash weight.
What about moving it to like the 20th?
It just takes three.
Okay.
Well, we still have
And
quorum.
as long as three of you are here, I'm okay on the June 27.
I'm fine with that. or any of those other days except the 13th?
So I think we got the two dates, one in May and then
23rd
27th.
and June 27th. And the reason June 27th is important, I have to do the trash rate increase as part of.
Okay, all right. All right, let's move on to the Housing Authority. Any items to be added or deleted there?
No, sir.
Anybody from the public wishing to speak on any non-agendized item from the Housing Authority? Seeing nobody, we'll move on to the consent calendar. First and a second, Madam Clerk.
Motion is to approve the consent calendar items as submitted on the Housing Authority agenda. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you very much. Any member or officer reports? Seeing none, we'll close that, move on to the successor agency. Any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody from the public want to speak on this agenda? Are you sure? No, Dick? Come on. All right, the only thing we have here is the consent calendar also. We have first
Second.
and a multiple second. And Madam Clerk.
Motion is to carry the, motion is to approve the consent calendar on the successor agency as submitted. Councilman Jindal?
Yes.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Daly? Mayor Duper?
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you very much. That concludes our meeting for this evening.